I'm here at Rockingham Castle in Northamptonshire, visiting James Saunders Watson, whose family has lived here for over 450 years. This castle is filled with historical stories and the inspiration for the work of one of Britain's giants of literature.
The dear old Rockingham days are always fresh in my heart, believe me. We are so proud at Rockingham to have that association with one of Britain's greatest writers.
And out in the gardens, James and I plant a little piece of history together.
Right.
You've done a brilliant job there.
Now, should I use all the soil?
Oh, I think so.
And
Thank
I'm going
you
to
so
remember
much.
this day forever.
Ah, brilliant.
When I married into the British aristocracy, it was the start of a wonderfully exciting journey. But it was also a little daunting. I became a Viscountess, and for an American girl from a small town outside Chicago, that was quite a shock.
I live with my husband Luke, heir to the Earl of Sandwich, and our family at Mapperton House in Dorset.
Mapperton has opened up an extraordinary new world for me, and I can't wait to share it with you all.
So if you love castles and manors and stately homes as much as I do, please join me as I head off to visit some of Britain's most spectacular historic homes. When the Norman castle was transformed into an Elizabethan home in the 16th century, the room every fashionable house needed was a long gallery. And it's here where James tells me of a very special visitor to the castle in the mid-19th century.
Well, it's wonderful to bring you up here to one of our literary gems. It's so nice to have an association with someone who actually is such a giant of our literary history. Charles Dickens.
Incredible. Right away, as soon as I saw that, I thought there must be a story about Charles Dickens here.
We're not a particularly literary family, but it is rather nice. Richard Watson, who is the picture, the gentleman on the right, was the younger son of Lord Sandys. He met Charles Dickens in Lausanne. Lavinia and Richard were on the Grand Tour.
Okay.
The equivalent of the Grand Tour.
Yes.
And they were staying in Lausanne, and then the villa next door was Charles Dickens and his wife. And they got on fantastically well.
This was to become a lifelong friendship, with Charles Dickens inspired by his visits to Rockingham, remarking to a friend in 1849, "Of all of the country houses and estates I have yet seen in England, I think this is by far the best."
And there are two really quite strong associations. Two books are very associated with Rockingham. One of them is David Copperfield, and the second is Bleak House.
Right.
David Copperfield, Charles Dickens dedicated the first edition to Richard and Lavinia Watson.
Incredible.
And by chance, not really, but I have it here. And this is the original edition. And there's a wonderful story with it, which I only really, if I'm honest, I only discovered when I got the book out today, because I bothered to read the letter in the flyleaf, that Richard and Lavinia's children loathed Dickens with a passion. They were far from liberals, they were high Tories,
Right.
hunting Victorian landowner gentlemen who did not like anything that sniffed of any liberalism. And they sold all of the Dickens memorabilia.
You're kidding
so
me.
all the letters went to America. All of the books, anything that was to say to it, disappeared. And this one appeared in a bookshop with a book dealer in London in 1902, and it was bought by the third Sir Michael. So Michael Seymour's grandfather.
Grandfather, wow.
Who was married to Watson.
So 52 years later, in one sense, after it was signed, it was found.
And it came back.
And the bookseller contacted.
Yes.
Right.
And there's a lovely note in the letter sort of saying it's obviously very important because it's got the private dedication.
Absolutely. Look at it. It says, affectionately inscribed to the Honourable Mr. and Mrs. Richard Watson of Rockingham, Northamptonshire. As a token.
As a token of such, so what's that, regard and friendship.
Yeah, yeah. It's a token
Charles
of...
Dickens.
Charles Dickens. So he was really, really close to
Terribly
Richard
close.
and Lavinia.
Yeah. And when he came to stay, some of them were relatively short, some of them were slightly longer, and he stayed a total of 20 days here. And he took inspiration from his husband. He staged plays for the benefit. Now, who did he do?
How fun.
I know. Well, we've got a playbill here.
And would he stage them here in the Long Gallery, do you think?
He certainly did one of them, they were staged here.
Amazing,
But he
amazing.
also staged another set, we're in the panel room.
How incredible. I'm just taking it all in that Charles Dickens was here.
But
and there was a play. This is
wonderful,
brilliant.
But this is a wonderful room to entertain.
Yeah.
It creates its own atmosphere.
It does.
He was such a showman, but he was always the lead act.
Look at this. Rockingham Castle will be presented Monday evening, January 13th, 1851, used up. And you're right, Sir Charles Coldstream, Mr. Charles Dickens. To be followed by the interlude of A Day After the Wedding, Colonel Freelove, Mr. Charles Dickens. Then you have, the performance will conclude with Mrs. Inchbald's farce, Animal Magnetism, and the doctor, the lead is Mr. Charles Dickens.
That's the original.
So this would
That's
be
the playbill that would have been stuck.
Right, just for the household.
Well, I think that there may have been for other local friends as well.
But still,
sort of advertising it. I bet you he's never won to Mr. Shilling.
No, but it's brilliant. And also at the end, it says, the theatre will be opened at 8:15. The performance will commence at 8 o'clock. God save the Queen.
So he used Rockingham as an inspiration, and he was actually very accurate in terms of some of the descriptions of the rooms and some of the characters. So Mrs. Rouncewell, the housekeeper, was a very accurate description of the housekeeper here at the time.
Right.
And I've got we're sitting in the Long Gallery at the moment, and there's a lovely quote in here when he talks about how the evening shadows draw across the pictures. And as this is west facing with these big windows, you do get and as the sun goes down out over across the valley, it sort of the shadows draw across the pictures. And describing the portrait of Lady Dedlock over the fireplace opposite us, he says here, but of all the shadows in Chesney Wold, the shadow in the long drawing room upon my lady's picture is the first to come and the last to be disturbed. At this hour and by this light, it changes into threatening hands raised up and menacing the handsome face with every breath that stirs. But
So he's really describing, obviously, this room.
This room.
And that portrait there.
I would
possibly.
Possibly.
You bet
highly
on it,
likely.
You'd bet on it. Yes. How brilliant.
So it's rather fun. So there's a very strong association with Dickens in here.
The friendship between Charles Dickens and Richard and Lavinia Watson was one of real affection, which is reflected in Dickens' works, but also in his private correspondence.
And he wrote the most touching letter at his distraught sadness at Richard's early death in 1852. He continued to correspond with Lavinia right up until his death in 1870. He wrote 2 months before, and actually we've got a copy of the letter here, where it says, "My dear Mrs. Watson, with the greatest pleasure I engage myself and Mary to you for the 2nd of May. You cannot too completely make me one of your family party. The dear old Rockingham days are always fresh in my heart, believe me. Ever faithfully yours, Charles Dickens." And that was written 2 months before he died. It's
incredible.
That relationship went on long after Richard Watson's death, and they were very close friends. Absolutely, and I can't tell you, we are so proud at Rockingham to have that association with one of Britain's greatest writers.
Absolutely, but also that you were able to, I think treasures here at these historic houses are so important. But when a treasure gets sold, and then you get it back, it's even more special and more extraordinary to even have that back in the family. So wonderful, incredible.
I couldn't agree more.
I really hope you're enjoying watching these episodes of American Viscountess, because I've been having so much fun making them. But we need your help, as we rely entirely on the support of our patrons to cover the cost of production. So please join our American Viscountess team by becoming a patron at patreon.com/American Viscountess. Here, you'll get early access to all the episodes, behind-the-scenes content, and extra benefits too. I really look forward to seeing you there.
Each generation at Rockingham has left their mark on the building itself, but also out in the surrounding landscape. To mark the 950th anniversary of Rockingham and the year of Queen Elizabeth II's Platinum Jubilee, James is planting trees across the estate and finding inspiration from those who have gone before him.
So Julie, this is a plan of the park and landholdings at Rockingham in 1815. And the reason I got it out is that it's really exciting. We've been looking at trying to do some really significant planting, and one of the ambitions is to plant 950 trees. Now, you know, and I know, that you can easily plant 950 whips in a belt and they'll disappear. Well, actually, we want to do something slightly significant. And so one of the things that I've been doing, it's been really fun, is finding some of the old maps, some of the old photographs, finding where avenues that we used to have, which have gone or disappeared, or lines of trees that have disappeared. So what I think is interesting about this map is that actually the site of the park with the castle here, there's quite a lot of change.
Yes.
But there's this wonderful double avenue that runs in from South Lodge. And if you look at the photograph here, that is the double avenue
my goodness, it's
in
beautiful.
1910, and they were all elms.
Look at that double avenue. I don't think
this
I've ever seen
yeah,
that before.
and this photograph, you've got the remnants of it, but they all died in 1976 of Dutch elm disease.
Of the Dutch elm disease, I see.
And Dad put back it's not really worked, but a mix of plain and beech.
Right.
Norwegian beech doesn't look good, and it's not a double avenue. It's sort of half a stand, and my ambition is not to go all the way down, but actually just to do it at the top. And so we're going to do that.
So that's where all 950 trees...
No, that's about 36.
All right, okay.
Well, maybe a bit more, because you have to place them every... We also took an avenue out here of dead sycamore. We're going to put those back. And I really love this idea of the sort of single belts of trees around the park. Now, we've got a belt there, but I'm going to plant on the other side a whole line, a single line, all the way from some sultry coppice all the way down back to the castle.
Oh, so this will be... Double line as well. Fantastic.
Now, we need to go and plant a tree to mark the Platinum Jubilee. So would you like to come and help me plant a tree in the wild garden?
I would absolutely love to do that. I can't think of anything better. Fun.
Let's go and do that.
The formal gardens here at Rockingham were redesigned after the Civil Wars in the 17th century. They are made up of a series of terraces around the castle.
We were talking about Dickens earlier.
Yes.
This terrace was part of his inspiration. This is where he conceived the ghost of Lady Dedlock. And this elephant hedge, we always say, we call it the ghost walk, or we call it the elephant hedge, because it was, I think, more regular in the 19th century, and it got somewhat misshapen. But actually, it looks like, if you look at it closely, it looks like elephants. It's wonderful. We don't know how old, 400-year-old
It
yew hedge.
absolutely does. Oh my, how wonderful.
And then if we go through this gate here, we're now going into Wild Garden, and this was the access that the parliamentarians sacked the castle in 45.
Right.
And they came up this ravine.
And they went over the wall.
And they climbed over the wall. Well, I think Lewis Watson was lying in his bed thinking he was safe as houses inside his castle.
Walking through an historic garden like this, you realize how fashions and tastes change. By the end of the 18th century, formal terraces were being supplanted by the desire for natural-looking gardens. Lady Faith Montague and her husband, Sir Michael Cum Seymour, did much to revive the gardens when they lived here after the Second World War.
Both Michael and Faith adored the wild garden. This was where their passion was, in growing, planting trees and recreating it. We're now, 60 years later, having to cope with the legacy of that. So many of the trees have come to the end of their lives, particularly the sort of prunuses. So Lizzie and I are having really good fun going around filling the gaps
Right.
and taking out some of the older trees. There used to be a whole line of beech along here, which was much earlier, but it's now given me the opportunity to plant underneath here. We won't benefit from it,
Right.
but the next generation will.
But so this is where some of the 950 trees will
very
be
much
planted.
so, very much so.
Fantastic.
And looking at them,
Wonderful.
we've already started. You can't see them. Miller's estate there. We lost two big beech here, so we put a couple of specimens in. Now we'll wander down. We'll go back down the steep bank here to the pond. And you've got, so this is where the wild swimming happened,
Yeah,
which you
this is
so
where I
love.
would love to wild swim.
And there was a series of fish ponds down below us here. And this pond was actually created as a labour device in the agricultural depression of the late 19th century. And William Paxton, who
Right.
built the Palm House at Kew, was engaged to design a series of ponds here. And there's a spring up on the bank just below that very tall sequoia that I was showing you earlier.
Right. So
And then it comes through here, and you'll find, if you look carefully, you might see the ladder, because it got
Oh.
thrown in.
oh my goodness. But can you swim? I mean, I would swim in this. I would want to. I would.
Well, I would. You're in here into about leaf litter, about that deep.
Okay. Beautiful though. It is rather peaceful and
It's
beautiful.
very-
And I
it's-
love that there was that little bench that we passed.
Yeah, it's difficult to imagine at this time of year. You know, you're deep winter and everything's in hibernation. You come in spring, in the summer, and this is just a sea of different leaf colours and things. And a lot of it's down to Michael's and Faith's brilliant planting of the mix of the trees. You have different greens at different contrasts.
Yes.
And it just has the most wonderful, as you say, until the midges come.
Until the midges come. Exactly. Oh, I know about them.
Now let's go and plant our tree.
So how many have you planted so far of
So
the
far
950?
not remember. We've done about 30 in here.
Right.
In the garden.
Okay.
This is the 31st.
This is the 31st.
We're doing 38 in avenues. We're putting in a couple of shelter belts.
Right.
We're going to do some clumps in the park
Yes.
where it's got rather thin. So here we go. Here we go.
All right,
A
what am
little Scots
I
pine.
planting here? What am I planting?
You're planting a Scots pine,
Scots pine. Fantastic.
and it's been come out of its pot.
Yes, yes.
So if you would like, if I pop it in there,
Right.
and then if you'd like to take a little bit of that, use the spade, we can then, and then I might have to get the professionals to come and sort me out, because you think I might know what I'm doing, which is not.
Well, how
Not
do you know
too sure.
how do you know I
Well,
know
you
what I'm doing?
because you told me you've planted lots of trees, incling one in Vinchinbrook.
Exactly.
And you're
Exactly.
rewilding at
And I'm
Mapperton.
rewilding at Mapperton, you know. I've got to get used to this. This is
Yeah.
brilliant practice for me.
There you are, so
Brilliant
good.
practice. Got to
We
go
need a little
all
at the
around.
back. We need a little bit at the back here.
This is fantastic. Right.
You've done a brilliant job there.
Now, should I use all the soil?
Oh, I think so.
Yeah,
I think so.
that's what I was
it needs.
thinking.
I'm
Wanted
sort of
to make
half
sure.
tempted. I might tip it up into that.
Well, yeah. Why don't you could do that? Because I'm kind of getting to the end.
I think you've done with the
I
digging
think,
bit.
I think I've done with the
I
spade.
think it's not.
Fantastic. Top it up. Look, it's lovely. Yep.
I'll get Gary to come and sort it out. He'll probably dig it out and do it again. That's what he did last time.
I'm still going to always remember that I planted it. Don't let me know if Gary does that.
No, I won't. There we are. You
We've
are
done
a
it.
star. Thank you so much, Julie.
Thank you,
You
James.
planted my 31st tree
I
for the
love
950th of Rockingham, the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. Isn't that just wonderful? Part
know.
of the Queen's, and we'll register it with the Queen's Green Canopy.
it. That's right. And
Thank
I'm going
you
to
so
remember
much.
this day forever.
Ah, brilliant. Oh, that's wonderful.
Next time on American Viscountess, James shares some of the treasures of Rockingham's fascinating past.
Oh my goodness. So I can see, it's almost like a puzzle.
Yeah, and you've got a spur, you've got an arm,
Yes.
you have a basic arm underneath it, and everything slides in like a jigsaw. This is just delightful.